Okay, let's just dive right into this explainer. Today, we're taking a journey through the very first chapter of the Book of Ruth. It's honestly an incredible story that goes from just absolute crushing despair to this completely unexpected grace. So, if you're ready to see how a seemingly small, totally ordinary family fits into a much, much grander picture, well, you're absolutely in the right place. But before we get bogged down in the historical details, I want you to keep one central question in the back of your mind. How exactly does the unseen hand of God navigate through the darkest of times? It's a pretty heavy thought, right? As we walk through the events of this chapter, I really want you to continually ask yourself, how would I react if I were in their shoes? Because what's so fascinating here, what really sets the tone for our entire 85-verse journey, is that this isn't your typical biblical blockbuster. We're not talking about parting seas or fiery chariots or booming voices from the sky. Nope. Instead, it's a story about ordinary people. It's about marriage, loss, loyalty, and redemption in just everyday life. It's about folks just like us, riding that regular, but let's be honest, often totally overwhelming roller coaster of human existence. Okay, starting with part one, the time of Judges. We really have to set the historical scene here, because this was arguably one of the darkest, most chaotic eras for ancient Israel. And there's a brilliant contrast going on here. On a macro level, you have the time of the Judges. We're talking 3 centuries marked by this vicious, endless cycle of rebellion, oppression, and moral depravity where, as the text actually puts it, everyone did what was right in their own eyes. Total anarchy. But then, the book of Ruth zooms way, way in. It focuses intimately on just one single family navigating life. It's this powerful reminder that even in the middle of absolute societal chaos, God deeply, deeply cares about the microscopic, ordinary details of our lives. Moving into part 2, tragedy strikes in Moab. Let's see how a desperately difficult situation quickly goes from bad to, well, much, much worse. Now, the names of our main characters here, they're incredibly ironic. You have a man named Elimelech, which literally translates to God is king. His wife is Naomi, meaning pleasant, and they live in Bethlehem, the house of bread. But when a massive famine hits this so-called house of bread, the man whose very name declares God is king decides to pack up and move his family to pagan Moab. Moab was historically hostile to Israel, known for some pretty dark stuff, including human sacrifice. So essentially, Elimelech completely fails to live as if God actually was his king. And what follows is a devastating cascade of tragedy, all packed into just the first 5 verses. Driven by sheer desperation, Elimelech moves his family to find salvation, but he dies. Then his 2 sons marry Moabite women, but over the next 10 years, both of those sons also die childless. Boom, boom, boom. It leaves Naomi as an aging widow in a hostile foreign land. She's been stripped of her husband, her sons, and literally any hope for security in the ancient world. Now, it's super easy for us to just sit back and judge Elimelech for leaving the promised land, right? But think about it. When things go badly, do we wait and trust, or do we take things into our own hands? Elimelech took matters into his own hands because he was literally watching his family starve. It really forces us to ask what we would have done in his desperate shoes to protect the people we love. Finding that balance between relying on God and taking proactive responsibility is rarely clear-cut. Which brings us to part 3, choosing to turn around. Having reached an absolute, complete dead end, Naomi is now staring down a monumentally difficult decision about her future. Then Naomi hears this tiny glimmer of hope. God has come to the aid of his people, and there's actually food back in Bethlehem again. So she decides to pack up whatever she has left and make the grueling journey home. Now, turning around and admitting we've hit a dead end, or realizing we've gone down the totally wrong path, that is never easy. It feels exactly like admitting failure. But Naomi's choice to retrace her steps, both physically and spiritually, is a beautiful reminder that it is never, ever too late to turn back to God. And the crucial point here actually hinges on a single Hebrew word, hesed. As Naomi is setting out, she urges her 2 Moabite daughters-in-law to just stay behind, go back to their families, and find new husbands. And as she does this, she prays a blessing over them using this specific, powerful concept. She asks the Lord to show them hesed, which means steadfast love, covenant faithfulness, and grace. It reveals something so profound about Naomi. Deep down, she still fundamentally trusts in God's grace, extending it even to foreigners, even when her own life feels completely shattered. You see, Naomi's faith is incredibly complex. A lot like the raw, unfiltered emotion we see in the Psalms of Lament. She's holding these conflicting, deeply painful truths all at once. She knows God is sovereign and loving, but she also openly believes his hand has turned against her to cause all this suffering. It's actually a really powerful witness for us today. It shows that even complaining to God in our darkest moments is still, in a way, clinging to our faith by a thread. All right, part 4, Ruth's radical loyalty. As Naomi pushes her daughters-in-law to stay in Moab, we're about to witness one of the most defining character moments in all of biblical literature.
So both young widows initially just weep and absolutely refuse to leave Naomi. But after Naomi basically insists they have zero future with her, their paths diverge. Orpah makes the sensible, totally worldly decision for a young widow in the ancient world. She goes back to her family. Totally logical, right? But Ruth chooses a path of radical risk-taking faith. She leaves literally everything she knows behind to step into a completely unknown future.
Just listen to these breathtaking words from Ruth. Where you go, I will go. And where you stay, I will stay. Your people will be my people, and your God, my God. I mean, wow. These beautiful words are essentially echoing God's own covenant with Israel. This is the exact moment this Moabite widow converts. She isn't just saying, I'll stick with you, mother-in-law. She is committing her entire existence, her future, and her very soul to Yahweh. It's truly astonishing when you stop and think about it. This supreme, ultimate act of faith comes from a Gentile, outside the law, someone from a nation that was considered Israel's enemy. At this moment, Ruth, the cultural outsider, demonstrates a way deeper, more profound trust in God than Naomi, the lifelong Jewish insider. It just powerfully proves that God's heart and his whole redemptive plan extends so far beyond any of those geographic or ethnic borders we humans try to put up. Let's wrap up our narrative journey today with part 5, a bittersweet arrival. We finally arrive back in Bethlehem, and the entire town is just absolutely buzzing over the appearance of these two women. But when the townspeople recognize her, the woman who once was known as Pleasant basically tells them, don't call me Naomi anymore. Instead, she says, call me Mara, which means bitter. It's actually a direct callback to the bitter waters in the wilderness of Exodus, back when the Israelites were complaining against God. Naomi is openly blaming the Almighty for all of her misfortune. Notice how she's completely ignoring the part her own family's choices played when they decided to bail on trusting God and move to pagan Moab in the first place. And the tragic irony of Naomi's perspective here is just devastating. She tells the townspeople that she went away full, but the Lord has brought her back empty. Even though she is physically standing right there in the Promised Land, her spiritual heart is miles and miles away. She is so blinded by her grief and her bitterness that she doesn't even see the absolute miracle standing right next to her. She isn't empty at all. God's immense grace is literally walking right beside her in the form of Ruth. And that brings us to the final moments of today's explainer. We end chapter 1 standing right at the edge of the barley fields. The physical famine? It's over. The harvest is just beginning. Which leaves us with this incredible, provocative question. Will this new agricultural beginning also trigger a new spiritual beginning? How exactly is God going to use this ordinary, everyday harvest to weave his unexpected grace right into their broken lives? It perfectly sets the stage for the redemption we're going to see unfold next. Thanks so much for joining me on this deep dive, and remember to keep seeking out those profound truths hidden in the ordinary moments of your own life.